I thank Tony Chejina. That's how it should be. You know, every once in a while, even investors and entrepreneurs, you know, need to have the consciousness that is a little revolutionary. The one that questions, you know, received paradigms and talks alternative pathways. I like, you know, the comrade from Uganda. He wants me to consider ways out of the quagmire. And I think I want to suggest to him that we should go back to the Lagos Plan of Action that we had in 1980. Now, that was, you know, a manifesto on African development that insisted on certain pillars, you know, that Africa required. The first was that Africa required to bring back into this whole fray the notion of self-determination. I mean, development is actually about your ability to determine what you want and how to get there. So you must have, you know, ample room for autonomous action. If you are able to determine for yourself what you want, then of course, development is more likely to be sustainable. That is one. Second thing is that the Lagos Plan of Action talked about self-reliance. It didn't ask for autarky. It didn't say we should switch off from the global system, but it said we cannot develop except we learn and develop capacities for doing things using our own local content, what we call local content now. We must do things for ourselves. The drive, the spirit, the enterprise must come from within. Development is not something that people do for other people. It's not done on behalf of other people. It is something that people do for themselves. And I think Walter Rodney, God bless his soul, was very clear on that. You know, Africa and Africans had a notion and a paradigm of development before their contact with Western capitalism. And it is at the point where that contact actually took place that, you know, Africa started to de-develop. And that de-development simply means, you know, that you are now having to adopt paradigms of development that have not been domesticated. I mean, I'm sure that Dr. Huegbe, who talks about domestication of laws and conventions, would understand that. But you also need to domesticate paradigms. And that's what we haven't done. Now, very quickly, therefore, to answer that question in summary, is to say that we need a different paradigm. We need a paradigm shift. Maybe we should go back in time and look at the Lagos Plan of Action and look at the African Alternative to Structural Adjustment, you know, which was published in 1985. These are basic manifestos for Africa's development that emphasize self-determination, relative autonomy, and self-reliance. Now, what can we do about the state? This is what Okwegwe comrade is asking. You know, what is happening today in Africa is abundant evidence of a monumental failure, the unraveling of the colonial state. You know, those who talk about post-colonialism, I think, have a conceptual reconsideration to make. Colonialism has not come to an end at all. So there's nothing post-colonial about these structures. It is colonialism in a new gap of a new kind. At the beginning, it was called neo-colonialism, neo-imperialism. That's still essentially where we are. The state itself, what we are beginning to see all over Africa, it's not just a Nigerian thing, is that people have finally come to the conclusion that they cannot find themselves in this state. This state cannot serve their interests. This state is a colonial imposition, and the unraveling of this state, the very fierce challenges, that, we have seen, the fierce challenges across Africa, whether it is in Congo, or it is in Mozambique, or it is in Senegal, or it is in Mali or Burkina Faso. All of these things are simply, indications of the unraveling of that colonial state. And the people are simply saying, we have had enough of this state. We have seen that it is not a state that can serve our interests. It cannot develop us. And the people are saying, we need to rebuild that state. We need to reform our own state. And I think, and I would argue, that the best way to do this is to have a process that allows for an elaboration of self-determination, the one that allows for bargaining and renegotiation of state spaces, the kinds of things that people are legitimately asking for all over. And mind you, that unraveling is not really about dissolution of the state. No, in many places they are saying we want to rebargain this state on our own terms rather than on the terms imposed by the colonial masters. The point, and let me just close on that note, is this. The states in Africa and the systems that they have been forced to adopt are experiments, and they continue as those experiments. They are nostrums. Nostrums are unsubstantiated experiments. So we really don't know whether they will work or not. So look at Canada, where Ukwe is. Look at Australia. Look at India. Look at Nigeria. Look at the West Indies. These are all countries that have the federal formula. And what is interesting is they all had a common colonial master, which was Great Britain. And Great Britain has, with all due respect to Kenneth Weir, Great Britain is not a federal system, yet it believed, that federalism, was necessary to hold those states together. So we want a federalism that is, legitimately owned, as a process for getting to the kinds of states that can be owned, the states that can be accountable, to governance structures that would emphasize participation, that would emphasize toleration, that would emphasize inclusivity, that would emphasize, above all, accountability on the part of all of those people. The states that are development states are states that can be held accountable. And remember that, when we had the confusion over how we should proceed, when we had neoliberal impositions, we then started to talk about how we could possibly bypass the state if it was possible. And then we were saying, let us retrench the state. Let us diminish the state. Let us have a state that will just simply be, a first amongst equals. Whereas what Africa needs is a state that is a developmental state. Everyone looks up to the state for development. Everyone wants to see in that state every person's interest represented. This is the decolonization of the state that is afoot everywhere in Africa. I hope, Ukwe, you would see, that decolonization simply means that colonialism has not come to an end. It is a colonial state that is still being unraveled. It is still, being questioned, and it is now ripe for an overthrow in the name of a second independence in Africa. And it is from the second independence movement that you will get the true state that will be representative, that will be participatory, that will be truly democratic, but most of all would be a developmental state.